Hi and welcome back. Today I'm really happy and very excited to announce that my daughter, the very skilled artist Morgana from Morgana Rose Art, will be joining us here as a regular content creator on Mondays. Now that we have almost 75,000 subscribers, which is amazing, and thank you all so much for subscribing, I'm finding that I need a bit more help to manage the channel. And I want to make some improvements and provide even more exciting loose watercolour landscape tutorials and really improve the quality of the channel and the content that we provide. So from now on, most Mondays, Morgana will be posting one of her fabulous landscape tutorials for you. So today she will be showing you how she painted this exquisite sunset seascape, which I really hope you'll enjoy watching and then having a go at trying something similar. So let's give her a warm welcome and don't forget, tune in on Mondays to see more fabulous content from Morgana.
Hello everybody, it's Morgana here. I'm so thrilled to be here today sharing this painting with you all. So with no further ado, let's begin. I'm beginning with a piece of Milford brand watercolour paper, 100% cotton, cold pressed. I've got it taped onto my board with just some good old-fashioned masking tape, and as you can see, I've just put a strip of masking tape horizontally across the paper to just mark off my horizon line. I've popped a list of the colours I'm using today up on screen. I'll also pop some in the video description for anybody who's interested. But for now I'm beginning by filling this top 2/3 of the paper with some lovely clean fresh water, ready to do a wet and wet sky wash. Beginning with a little bit of ultramarine blue just along the top here. This is going to be the beginning of our sunset. Lovely rich colour. I'm using it quite lightly with plenty of water because I want to keep this paper nice and wet while I do my wet and wet blending. And now I'm using Quinacridone Gold or Quin Gold for a lovely bright and vibrant yellow colour. And just pulling this mostly along the bottom part of this sectioned off piece of paper. You can see how lovely and rich this is. Putting it on quite strongly and then using the large wash brush to just pull it around the wet paper, get the paint moving, get it softened down, and just moving it up towards that blue colour. Trying to be careful not to blend too heavily. Of course, blue and yellow make green, and I don't really fancy a green sunset today, so I'm introducing a little bit of Alizarin Crimson. This is our third primary. We've got a lovely blue, yellow and red. The Alizarin Crimson is just going to soften down those two other colours and hopefully create a nice sort of rusty sunset coloured transition. So all I'm doing now is I'm going to just quickly go over my colours and strengthen them a little bit. So you can see I'm introducing a slightly stronger ultramarine along the top of the paper here. And you can see, I hope from how I'm sweeping my brush across, there's still plenty of water on this paper, which means I'm able to blend it really nicely. So again, just adding a little bit stronger colour. This is Alizarin Crimson and a touch of ultramarine as well, just to soften it down, give those slight sort of hint of dusty purple evening shades. And now I'm using the flat of the brush to bring the colour up to create the impression of some soft scudding clouds coming across this lovely sunset. Now, as these clouds are really appearing very soft and subtle, I decided that wasn't quite going to do for me today. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking a little bit of opaque white gouache. You can see here I'm putting it on with a mid-sized mop brush. This is my Escoda Ultimo synthetic mop brush, size 10, so medium size, and I've mixed it with the white gouache with a little bit of Alizarin Crimson and a little bit of Ultramarine, so we get a lovely dusty violet colour. And I'm sweeping it across the sky, introducing an interesting opacity, this sort of drift of clouds. You can see here I'm putting in a stronger colour, but using the tip of the brush and holding it quite high up to just sweep the colour across the paper, just to get it moving, still using this lovely wet and wet blending as we still have plenty of water on the paper. You can see I'm just able to move it around among the sky, and it's giving us this lovely impression of these soft drifting clouds. And the edges, of course, because we're doing wet and wet, the edges of these will just soften into that lovely translucent wash we've already put down, and we get that lovely softness into this sunset. And of course, the delight of using the opaque white gouache mixed with a colour is that it will go over the top of the colours we've already created. So you can see I'm doing exactly that. Just down at the bottom here, just putting a little bit of extra cloud detail over that lovely soft peachy sunset colour. And basically it's all down to personal preference at this point, doing as much or as little blending as you like, adding in as many or as few clouds as you think looks right. For me, I'm really happy with how this ended up looking. I then love that sort of sense of drifting clouds across a beautiful bright sky. So now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to carefully remove this masking tape that I've used to set the horizon line, and I'm just using a piece of clean tissue to clean off those sides there, keep that nice and neat and stop that water or paint from spreading or causing any runbacks or cauliflowers. So I've left this to dry. It's nice and dry now, and you can see it's dried really nice and flat despite all the water we used earlier, so never worry about using too much water in these sort of things. And now I'm still using my large flat brush and using diluted versions of the same colours that I used for the sky. I'm just bringing in a lovely bit of loose texture into this foreground here, which is going to be our sandy beach. You can see I'm being quite careful here along the horizon line. I know I'm holding my brush a little bit awkwardly, but I do struggle sometimes doing neat horizontal lines as my hands do shake sometimes. So this for me is a little hack, so to speak, a little way that I can get that nice straight line just by holding the brush a little bit higher up and getting that control. And see, I'm sweeping diagonally across as well as horizontally, just with really light paint, and that's going to give us that lovely impression of sandy beach. You know, when you see a sandy beach and the tide's gone out and it's left these wonderful sort of rippling, soft diagonal lines in the sand, the beach has almost been sculpted by the receding waves. It's the impression that I'm trying to give here by doing these lovely sort of sweeping brush strokes diagonally across the paper, introducing a little bit more ultramarine blue for that lovely hint of dust, and of course the water as well. So now I'm going to introduce my stones, my little ruggedy, rocky outcrops popping up here out of the beach. And to do this, you can see I'm using quite rich paint, but with quite a lot of water as well. And I'm using a combination of colours. This is Vandyke Brown. It's a lovely warm rich brown colour, and I'm mixing it with ultramarine blue, and you can see I'm just sort of dabbing it in here. Rather than mixing it on the palette, I'm sort of letting it mix on the paper, because you get that lovely sort of really easy loose textural impression as the two rich paints sort of marry and mingle together. They slightly begin to granulate, they create really interesting shapes and textures all on their own. In fact, it almost feels like cheating, but it's a lovely really quick, easy, loose way to create some lovely texture in things like this, in sort of rocky outcrops and that sort of stuff. And now just moving across to the right hand side and repeating the same process again. I don't want to take up too much of this lovely soft sandy beach with these little outcrops of stone, but I also want to try and strike a balance between not having it looking too bare and too empty. So by sort of moving from one side to the other, I feel like I'm just sort of popping them in as and when, sort of using my artistic eye to gauge where the next sort of point of interest in the painting needs to be. I've switched to a smaller brush. This is a smaller round brush to just add in some little smaller parts of detail into these stones. And it helps when you're trying to do loose work like this to help hold your brush quite high up when you're doing the initial sort of lines and placement. You can see here, and now I'm scooting down to hold it a little closer, just to put in some detail where I'm putting in these little bumps and little nubs of rock poking up out of the sand, hopefully keeping it looking really natural, really spontaneous and really loose. But again, still using that quite heavy, rich Vandyke Brown and Ultramarine mixed together and letting them blend a little on the paper with enough water to get them to sort of move around. You can see there me hesitating about where to put the next little rocky outcrop in. This perhaps would be something that for those of you who are more sketchily minded would be fun to draw in with pencil before you go in with the wash, so that you know perhaps where, you know, compositionally you want your stones and your rocks and your little tide pools to be. For those of you who are more organised than I am with this sort of thing. Oh, and I must apologise as well for the change in lighting that's happening. You can see I'm afraid I've got a little bit of shadow on the painting. I'm trying a new setup. I've got a new daylight lamp to help me paint into the small hours as the weather gets darker here in the UK. I don't think I've quite got it set up right to show the true colours and to not get too many shadows on the board, so I will see what I can do for the next video, but for now I hope it's not too much of a distraction. So for the distant sea, I'm adding in a little sweep of ultramarine across just under this horizon line here, just a narrow band of lovely blue, and that's going to be our distant sea. So there's a very low tide, and we've got these sand flats as the main feature with these lovely tide pools, lovely rocks poking out. But I still wanted to make sure that you could still see the sea in the far off distance, so that's why we're adding in this little band of ultramarine blue. I'm just doing it quite carefully, quite slowly, using my small brush to make sure it doesn't go, doesn't spill over or accidentally get too wide. I think perhaps a small flat brush could serve you really well here as well if you're excellent at just doing nice, strong horizontal lines. That would work really well. But for me, I'm just using my little round brush and building up the colour until I'm happy with its intensity. So now I'm just going to use the Ultramarine again, and see I'm just loosely sweeping in a little bit of extra Ultramarine around the base of these rocks that I've put in now that they're dry. And that's just going to give the impression of the little tide pools, the little rock pools that have been perhaps where the water has collected around the sunken sand at the base of these stones. We've got these little tide pools where perhaps we've got lovely starfish and anemones and little shrimps and crabs hiding against the receding tide, hoping for the sea to come back in again. So now just doing some more foreground, and you guessed it, some more lovely rocks using exactly the same colours. We've got the lovely rich Vandyke Brown and the Ultramarine Blue, and I'm just going to introduce a lovely simple sweep of stones across this foreground here. You can see I'm using plenty of water. You can see the light glinting off it. That's how wet the paper is at the moment, where that water is. But lovely, rich, thick paint as well. And again, we're getting that really nice, interesting blend of dark colour that I think works really nicely against our softer sunset colours as well. And so just going in and tidying up with the small brush. It's a lovely way to paint, I think, is I like to go in with the larger brush to get those big rough shapes in first, and then with the smaller brush you can go in and just neaten up the edges here and there and just tidy up a little bit. You'll notice as well that I'm trying to leave tiny little patches of white paper peeking through where I'm putting in my rocks, trying to make sure they're not all too dark. You just leave those little specks of white paper peeping through here and there, and they just act as those little glints of light, perhaps the sun shining off a little patch of water and just causing that little bright glint that helps to give the rock its shape and a little bit of interest, rather than just being this big old dark blob on the landscape. So now I'm really happy with this foreground, and whilst those rocks are continuing to dry out, I'm just going to put in my two solitary figures. So I've chosen to put them at the centre of the paper, but still compositionally following the rule of thirds, because they're about a third of the way down, which helps, I think, really helps with the balance of this particular painting, as we've got all that detail all around them and then this lovely clear patch in the middle for our figures. And I'm just trying to do it really loosely, just getting them standing there. I'm doing two figures, one slightly taller than the other, and just using the tip of this small round brush. And you don't need to try and be overly detailed or worry about too many different features. Specifically, you just need sort of a line for the head and the body. Just make it slightly wider where the arms are going to fall, and of course a little round or oval for the head. And then just bringing down my second figure as well, starting at the shoulders and just bringing that line down so they're both standing at the same point on the beach. I think it's rather romantic painting, this one, perhaps. Two figures together standing solitary on a beach gazing into the sunset. Somewhere I'd quite like to be right now. I don't know about the rest of you. So now that I'm happy with my figures, I'm just going to go ahead and add a nice long shadow. Of course, this is evening, so the sun is low and the shadows are long, so I'm just adding a nice long shadow just at the base of these two figures, bringing the colour down from their feet. I'm using the same colour that I used to paint the figures in, which is the Vandyke Brown, again mixed with Ultramarine, but really heavily, so it's lovely and dark. But now I'm using it really lightly with lots of water, and you can see just two really nice simple lines coming down from the feet of the figures, and that's their shadow or their reflection in this lovely low tide sandy beach. There we go, simple as that. And just for a final touch, I'm just going to add a little collection of wheeling gulls, seagulls or herring gulls perhaps, just rising up into this lovely soft sunset. And here we are, this is the finished painting. Thank you everybody for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Huge thanks again to Lois Davidson for her hospitality and generosity in letting me hop onto her channel to share this with you guys today. This is how the painting looks in daylight. You can see the colours a little cleaner, a little brighter. I was struggling with that electric light all evening, but I'm really pleased with how it turned out, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of it as well. So thanks again everybody for watching. Wherever you are, whatever you're up to, I hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and happy painting.